All right, so let me first of all welcome all of you. Thanks for joining in. We are going to be exploring coaching in the new normal, right? So that's where we are going. We're going to be looking at what executive coaching has been doing, what it would look like in the new normal. We are right now at a time where lots of things have changed. So we're going to be exploring that. We're going to share some thoughts from our side, but we are also going to look at some thoughts from all of you participants. But first of all, a very, very warm welcome on behalf of C2C Organization Development. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sanjay Dugar. I will be leading the session today. I am ably supported by two of the several coaches that we have who have been working in the background. That's Jyoti Das and Shalil Nalakat. They are also on in the session today. And on the creative side and the tech support, I have two other colleagues of mine, Remuna Rai and Jijit Johnson. So they will be also supporting me as we go through the session today. So just to give you a quick introduction of C2C organization development, we bring people development strategy together and we deliver solutions with real business impact. Right? C2C organization development basically is a high performing team of OD consultants, facilitators, that's our DNA, and coaches who believe that people are at the core of organization success. We have in-depth experience in multiple industries organization development and work people development strategy together, and we deliver solutions with real business impact. We're having some background noise. Can we have that muted? Basically is a high-performing team of OD consultants, facilitators, that's our DNA, and coaches who believe that people are at the core of organization success. We have
Sanjay, you're on mute. We can't hear.
Our story so far, we are at about 132,000 plus participants with whom we have been providing our solutions. If I convert some of our effort into training days, it's over 7,000. We have facilitated sessions. We have conducted various coaching programs across 40 plus countries where we do different kinds of interventions. We work with 10 partners, 10 global partners, and that's how we bring some of our best practices to India. And we have about 39 facilitators in our team. Our expertise predominantly is bucketed into three areas where we work into the OD solution space. We also contribute a lot into learning solutions, and we have some special programs for enabling L&D professionals. I'm sure many of you will be looking at all of these, and we'll be happy to have more detailed conversations on these offline. But let's get started. Let's get to know who's who in the room today. And what I would invite you is on your chat box, please share your name, your organization that you represent, and what was your core purpose for joining this session today. Let me give you a little time to type in on the chat window. All right, thank you, Bindu Venkatesh. Okay, I can see a few typing in on the chat. To understand in the context of current pandemic context, okay. All right. Yeah, you've just stepped into coaching shoes. Great. Let's see what we can understand from you as well while we share some thoughts from our side. Okay. You get more insights about coaching. Okay, so the topic is of interest to me. Okay. Awesome. So a lot of you are here to know more about coaching, to look at it from the perspective of the new normal. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so let's move on. So I'm going to invite you to go to a website called menti.com. And once you enter in on that through a browser, you will be prompted for a code. And the code that you can enter is 53661. I'll repeat that, 53661. And the question before you is, why do we use executive coaching interventions? Why does any organization or any individual actually use executive coaching? So share your thoughts on menti.com. And I'm going to invite my colleague Jijit to share his screen so that we can see what responses people have. So Jijit, can you please share your screen?
Yes, Sanjay.
All right, there we have the screen. We have about 7 people who have already responded. I'm going to invite the others as well. So people use executive coaching interventions for various reasons. For development seems to be the core right in the middle out there. Transformation, excellence, better results, efficiency, to guide individuals for better results seems to be again picking up. Okay, so we have about 24 responses as of now. Let's just wait for a few more. So for those of you who came in while this activity just started, we are at menti.com and using the code 53661. So we are having an interesting word cloud getting formed over there, lots of it. And I still see that right in the middle, development is the word that is standing out. A lot of people have typed in development. Transformation seems to be the other key word that's coming up. So let's wait for a few more responses. Okay, these are some interesting words out there in the word cloud. Okay, I'm going to be giving roughly about 10 seconds more for people to type in any other responses that they have for this. Otherwise, we'll move on. All right. Okay, thanks, Jijit. And if you can stop share, I'll pull up my screen again. Okay, there we are. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on why you use executive coaching interventions. So typically, as what a lot of people define executive coaching, and it's right there in front of your screen, it is seen as a way to help leaders change. And here I'm using the word leaders to represent coaches, leaders, managers, or anyone who wants to take up coaching. I'm just calling them leaders as they represent leading a certain project or a certain group of people and so on. And they're the ones that they could maximize their potential and create more benefit for their team and their organizations. That's pretty much like a highlight, and a lot of you use many of these words in the word cloud as well. And the International Coaching Federation, right, the ICF, one of the leaders in the coaching space, or a body that really defines coaching, and they define it as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So just bear in mind, we are looking at both the personal and the professional potential. Let's see what we have as our agenda for the webinar today. So I've tried to break this format into a very simple series, says what. So what is happening around us? So what? And now what do we do? So on the what, we'll go through looking at what has changed from the leader's perspective, or if you want to call it as the coach's perspective, and what has changed from the team members' perspective, the ones that are being led by the coachee. So they could be team members, managers, other people that they work with, and what has changed from their perspective. And if there has been all these changes, so what, right? So why should these actually matter to a coach? Finally, it's the coachee and the coachee's environment. And then we are looking at if there are some of these elements happening, and if the coach is looking at a few things, now what exactly should the coach now be doing, right? How different is it from before? Has something changed there? We'll explore that as we go on. So starting with what has changed from the leader's perspective, right? So remember that leader here means the coachee. So first of all, VUCA has accelerated. So for some of you who are not familiar with the term VUCA, we are talking about an environment that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now, all these elements, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and the ambiguity has actually increased or accelerated. It had always been increasing, but at the current time, especially a post-pandemic, there has been a very, very rapid speed at which it is changing. At the same time, there is a very high pressure on performance. And when we say performance, we have seen a little dip during the lockdown stage. And as we come out of it, there is a huge pressure to kind of recover from what has happened so far. At the same time, the coach is actually wondering, am I going to create a strategy which is aimed at survival, or am I going to be looking at growth? And constant battle between these two, adding to the pressure on performance. And the clear call out, and this was one of the things that happened when I attended a CEO conclave meeting. It was, of course, a Zoom meeting. And we heard a lot of people thinking, how are they going to get their business back to normal? And the key word that stood out for all the conversations that we had, literally everybody was revolving around, how do we innovate? What do we do differently? And to innovate, they looked at how companies can actually work beyond their erstwhile ways of working in collaboration. We know that collaboration itself was a challenge when people were trying to do collaboration between different business functions within a company. And now the boundaries are opening up and people are actually started talking about cross-company collaboration. How are we going to collaborate with different companies so that we can jointly innovate, and both or more, two or more organizations that collaborated, how can they all get back on track as soon as possible? And decision making has moved up. So this was another very key finding when we were talking to a group of people, and some of the leaders who had started restoring back their work, they were saying that strangely, some of my immediate reportees, my second in line, whom I was depending a lot on to make important decisions, let alone the important decisions, but they are refusing to make decisions which are much minor in nature as well. Why they are doing that? There's a lot we can talk about that, a lot we can explore why the second line is stopping making decisions on their own, and for everything they are looking up to the leader. Now let's look at it from those people who are now not really making those decisions. What is their perspective? So the needs have moved downwards. So for some of you who are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as evolution takes place, people move up and they are no longer worried about the basic requirements. But strangely, at the onset of this pandemic and lockdown, a lot of people started thinking about how they need to handle their immediate needs, their basic needs. And that's why I said that needs have actually moved downwards in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They want to stay in the top performers. There's a sort of a perceived fear that maybe I might lose my job, or am I really safe in the company that I am in? If I'm ousted from my job, what do I do? Because it appears that hiring, or hiring, especially at the more middle and senior levels, has really come down. A lot of struggle with the new ways of working. The borders of time, the borders of home versus work, all of that have blurred, and a lot of people are struggling because they are now working in an environment where they are working virtually, but they are also attending to other needs. Sometimes it could be maybe their children are also studying at the same time, their partners are also maybe working from home, and everybody is kind of working together, but all of them are working differently. All of them have different times, different needs. And the information that is there about, for example, survival versus growth, or the strategy of the organization, all of this is pretty unclear. As you go down the hierarchy, it becomes even more ambiguous as you move down. And the ways of interaction with teams have changed considerably. It's no longer working the same way as they have been used to. So trying to get information, even if they were keen to make a decision, they are unsure whether they have access to all the right information or all the right thoughts from everybody in the team. Is it really open? They no longer have that physical connect. They are dependent on virtual platforms. How do they read the emotions of the others? Will they be making the right decisions? Lots of thoughts like that going on in their mind. And emotional fears are playing up significantly. All kinds of emotional fears. What is going to be happening to them? How are they going to be looked at if they make a decision? And particularly if they make a decision that fails. And therefore, work life itself, the work-life balance, as people call it. But then if you look at work and life, that itself has transformed, and today it has a completely new meaning. Given all these circumstances, it is fairly understandable why the second in command or the second line, they seek a lot of affirmations before they make a decision. And very often they defer the decision to their leaders. Now, given that the change has happened on both the coach's side and also the environment of the coach, the conventional, most often used grow model, what has happened to that? So if we look at goal, defining this and maintaining it seems challenging. It's no longer that at the start of the coaching assignment, I can fix a goal, and then can I sustain that same goal? Will it be valid as the coaching intervention goes along? That could be a challenge. When you look at reality, there are a lot of unknowns, and people do not know even how to perhaps share their reality to go forward in their coaching scenario. They are not sure what elements actually come into play given the situation they are in. As we move to options, which is usually done after the goal and reality is kind of cemented, and we already see that both these are constantly moving, how do you really generate options? Now, coming up with workable options, it is going to be challenging. The coachee may be very, very creative, very thoughtful, but yet given the fact that goal and reality are constantly changing, the options they come up with would always be a bit challenging to them. And if the options are challenging and if they can't understand the pros and cons of their options very easily, then obviously the way they want to go forward, it is going to be extremely difficult for the coachee to make a commitment and then stay accountable in that situation. Now, all these perspectives, right? So that's what's happening at the leader's side. This is what is happening at their team members' side. The GROW model, which is a very commonly used coaching model, or perhaps any other coaching model you use, would still have these same ambiguous situations. And so what? I mean, the coach finally is looking at how do I move people towards a goal. But keeping all these perspectives, why are they important to a coach, right? And here's where I'm going to tap into the intelligence of the group, all the participants here. I'm going to have you move into breakout rooms. We will perhaps have like 12 breakout rooms, and we will have you move in. As soon as the breakout rooms are opened, Jijit is going to set up the breakout rooms at the back. And as soon as he's ready and he opens the breakout rooms, you will receive a pop-up asking you to join. So you could join, you could click on that and you will be taken to your respective breakout rooms. In the breakout room, what you're going to be discussing is what are some capabilities of a coach that would help the coachee in this situation. Now, some of you may be familiar with ICF competencies, the 11 competencies of ICF, but even otherwise, given the current situation with so much of change happening for the leader, happening for the team members, and the ambiguity of using a commonly used model in coaching, what could be some capabilities of a coach that would help the coachee in this situation, right? So you will be moving into breakout rooms. You will have about 10 minutes in the breakout rooms. Just make sure that you capture your discussions there, because once you're back, we will ask you to type on the chat window and share it with everybody in the room, the top 3 capabilities of a coach that you would think is very, very critical for a coach going forward. So just before I have you go into the breakout rooms, just want to check if everyone is clear about what they are doing. If a few of you can respond on the chat with either a yes, or if you need me to repeat the instructions, that would be great. Okay, so I see quite a few yeses have come in. Okay, Jijit, are we set with the breakout rooms?
Yes, Sanjay.
All right, so then please go ahead and open the breakout rooms, and we will be giving them 10 minutes on it. So Jyoti and Shalil, would you have access to chat? Will you be able to read out a few of the responses?
Yep, that's okay.
Okay, so you can
we'll
pick
do
a
that.
few. Yeah, can mention a few from Facebook as well, and a few others that people will type as they come back.
We can start with a couple on Facebook also if you want to. While
Yeah,
we're waiting
we'll just wait for the participants to come back and then we can do that. So I can see that Team 7 has already put their thoughts in. Mindful listening, effective probing, asking the right questions, managing complexity, and establishing trust and intimacy. Yeah, so those who are back, please feel free to type in what you've discussed in your room and you can put it up in the chat window. So we were looking for the top 3 capabilities of a coach. Okay, active listening, powerful questioning, establishing and building trust. Okay. So meanwhile, Jyoti or Shalil, if you want to read out some of the messages that came on Facebook, that would be good.
I'm sharing some from Facebook,
Sure.
Sanjay.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
there's empathy, appreciative inquiry.
Okay.
Coach needs to be present, empathetic, flexible to the needs of coachees. Keep the focus on the short to medium term, be creative. The coach should be able to discuss technology role in future business. Also frequent check-ins. Ayub says self-belief is an utmost quality or capability we see, especially when discussed, as the people aren't able to make a decision and look up to the leader.
Thank you, Jyoti. Let's, Shalil, can you see some of the messages that have come from the breakout rooms? Maybe read out a few of them.
Yes, sure. So there are quite a few actually that's come in. I'll start from the top. So Binay first team 7, mindful listening, effective probing, managing complexity, establishing trust and intimacy. And then you have from team 4, you have active listening, that Supriya said it in, active listening, powerful questioning, establishing and building trust. Vasudha Kodireka has said, empathy, listening for empathy, patience, trust, asking right questions. So there's a lot of things on empathy. I see that empathy is very, very strong here.
Awesome. Thank you, Shalil. And of course, the participants can always scan the chat to look at all of them. But let's move on. I think we got the gist of what people have shared. And that leads us to the coaching 2.0 model. So what you see right now is the traditional grow model that has always been used, and the image probably resonates with a lot of coaches as well. And here's the new version that at C2COD we believe will make a difference. Just drawing your attention to the circular nature. And also, if you look at the connect between each of the boxes between goal, reality, options, and will, it's not an easy path. It's not a seamless connect. It is something which is, I would call it more like a rough road in which you're traveling to move from one to the other. And on top of that, to make this even more relevant, we probably also have to look at how we can have the coach move back and forth between any of these boxes from any stage. In effect, what we are saying is that the goal might change along the way, and the coachee needs to be flexible enough to be able to go back to visiting the goal, or reality situations may change. Options that look feasible may not be feasible in a short while. And same way, the willingness of the coachee to do something that was talked about might be a real change of mind there. And so the coachee will have different thoughts that are bothering him, different situations that are happening, both with him as well as with the environment around him. And that's why a coach would perhaps have to be that much more flexible. And rightly captured, a lot of you had said in the breakout room as well, models used need to be flexible. That's what we are proposing. Mindfulness plays a significantly bigger role. Mindfulness was always there, but it plays a significantly bigger role because the coach would have to make special efforts to look at visiting attachments and aversions of the coachee, and then weave his way forward from there as to how he can lead the coachee further. Obviously, the coach will have to be emotionally intelligent, a lot of self-awareness of what's happening to himself as a coach or herself as a coach, and a lot to do with social awareness, staying on top of the game about the environment. Many of you mentioned use of appreciative inquiry, and I'll particularly draw your attention to the ORID framework. Right? ORID, for some of you who don't know, is a framework which actually is an acronym which stands for objective, reflective, interpretive, and decisional. The use of questions to first allow the coachee to answer objective information, which is a lot easier, although in the VUCA time that may not be as easy also. But after that, a conscious effort to spend a lot of time to allow the coachee to reflect. And then, of course, the coach plays the role of mirroring all that information. Again, allow the coachee to interpret what from this objective and reflective thoughts make sense for him, and then come to a decision on the way forward. Right? Powerful use of, many of you said powerful questions, but this is a great questioning framework. Erstwhile, from objective information or data that was available in both goal and reality settings, the coach would normally move forward to options. But I think it's time for the coach to slow down a bit and help the coachee look at how they can think through a lot more, understand the interpretations of all the thoughts that they have, and then come up with decisions. Glimpses of counseling and mentoring would be a need, and this may be controversial for many who are well versed with coaching frameworks, that how do you kind of mix counseling and mentoring, where they're quite different from coaching. But then glimpses of that might be required given the situation. And like some of you rightly put, the coach will need to put themselves in the coachee's shoes. And when you're there, finally, an organization doesn't mind whether you call a person a coach, a mentor, a guide, a trainer, a facilitator, a guru, whatever, but they need their end objective done, which is maximizing the coachee's potential, right? So it do what it takes, and therefore adaptation by the coach is expected. In fact, I would actually say it is mandated. Now, the coach will have to be a lot more flexible, cannot rely on a pure coaching framework is what we are saying. And therefore, it leads me to provide you with some insight about the 7 additional roles or additional hats that an effective coach would need to wear. And this has been adapted from a book called The Mindful Coach by Doug Silby, which actually was very popular. Needed a little adaptation, and here are the 7 additional hats that we think would be useful for a coach to consider. The first one being that of a master. What I mean by that is the coach needs to stay self-aware, constantly seeing what's happening and being aware of how he or she is actually pushing the coachee forward. Models growth and learning. A lot of it, the coachee is going to be looking up to the coach as a role model, and the coaches fully being present in the situation, looking at every small little change that is happening would be very critical. The second hat would be that of a partner. And by the way, the 7 additional hats are not in any particular priority order. They are just a collage of 7 additional hats. The coach will have to play the role of a partner, will have to help define and sometimes even negotiate, share responsibility for the coaching relationship. A lot of emphasis earlier used to be on the coachee. It used to be almost like a 80-20, with the weightage of 80 on the coachee. But now the coach will also need to play a fair share to make sure that the coaching relationship goes the way it should. An investigator. So again, very aptly ties in with some of the words that I got from the breakout room, which says trying to understand the coachee a lot more, finding out the true needs, the stated needs and the unstated needs, gather information about the client situation, desired outcomes, and possible options or actions. Another hat that they would like to consider a lot more is the reflector hat. Providing very, very clear feedback and encouraging the coachee to be self-aware of what is happening to him or her based on the situation around. Another one on the teacher hat, which could be quite controversial for many of you who practice coaching, but actually playing that role, where plays the role of a teacher to provide some distinctions, understanding the semantics or language, and providing some knowledge to the client. And another hat of a guide would be very useful, where they provide impetus and ideas for action. So erstwhile, this was a big no-no, with the coach saying that let the coachee come up with all possible ideas. But in some subtle way, the need really would be that this might be a situation for a coach to play out, particularly if they want to maximize the coachee's potential. And finally, one of a contractor. Again, what I mean by that, encourage mutual accountability. So the word mutual is kind of brought in over here, because in normal coaching, we always used to say the accountability is on the side of the coachee all the time. But here it's a little more about, can we do it together? Can I be your walking stick along the way? Right? And monitors the client follow through as well. So this is what we thought should be some things which align with what coaching 2.0 should look like. Open to questions. Please feel free to type your questions on the chat window. My colleagues are monitoring them as well. So if they read out something that we could try and answer, or maybe we could get some answers from others in the room as well, that would be good. So we are open to questions. We have roughly about 10 minutes before we close the session. So please go ahead.
Sanjay, there's a request for the previous slide to come up here.
Yeah, I put that up.
Yes.
Yes, Vasudha, the previous slide is up.
So hi Sanjay, I wanted to ask something.
Sure, go ahead, Binal.
So in terms of understanding about the coaching model, you've given us a great idea about it. But the only thing that how will your team come into the picture for us, to develop as a coach? Because that's what I wish to understand.
Thank you for that question, Binal. So at this point of time, we've just shared our thoughts. We at C2COD, we actually practice this methodology as well. We have been a strong propagator of the use of ORID even erstwhile, but now we recognize that it needs to go a lot deeper. So Binal, if you write into us on info@c2cod.com, we can specifically try and understand a little more about what support and help you require. And our team will be very, very happy to see how we can help you through on it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Binal. Okay, so I can see a question: in this tough, emotionally overwhelming times, how easy is it for a coach to remain calm and actually don the 7 hats? Great question. No specific answer, but I think all coaches, if they start thinking about this, then they might start to get better. That's my thought on that. Should an executive coach be from the same industry domain as the coachee for the coaching initiative to be successful? That's a great question, Benaifa. All the time, we have always been saying that the power of the coach is really about asking questions, not so much about the domain and the experience. However, in the current environment, as we see the need of these 7 hats, there might be some merit to look at coaches who have at least a reasonably good understanding of the environment related to that industry or domain. So for the first time, I think I'm now going in a different direction, which says that some amount of domain expertise would be good to have. I'm again not saying that it is an absolute must, but it's definitely good to have. In fact, this reminds me of a conversation with Marshall Goldsmith that we had roughly about 2 weeks ago. It was just an offline chat. And many of you know Marshall Goldsmith's mastery in emotional intelligence. And we were discussing how his expertise on emotional intelligence would make him an even greater coach than what he is right now. So the emotional part does play a lot of weightage, but of course the domain will now start to become relevant. So thank you for that question, Benaifa. I've got another one. Appreciate the bold stance and challenging the status quo. And okay, that's more a comment. Thank you so much for that comment. Yes, we have taken a bold stance. I totally agree with that. And some rules, I won't really call them breaking, but it's a bit of tweaking that is going to help, because the final goal for all organizations is how can we maximize the coachee's potential? Just labeling it under coaching or training or facilitating, it doesn't really matter. As long as the coachee progresses, the organization gains, the teams do better, that's what we are seeking. So that's where we thought that we would propose a little bit of tweaking on the classical coaching model. But thank you for recognizing that and sharing that. We have another question: how coaching can be a consistent strategy in organizations? Thank you for asking that, Vidyut. Coaching as a consistent strategy is almost become essential, because erstwhile we had a lot of leadership workshops, facilitated sessions, trainings. We believe that while that plays a role, today the need is to deal with each individual very, very customized, which means that coaching has to be adopted more and more. We believe that a lot of coaching is what we are going to see organizations adapting in the near future. it will have to be a consistent strategy for businesses to thrive. Thank you for that. We have a question that came up on the Facebook. Can you explain Coac as a contractor? So thank you for that question from, I don't know exactly who gave that question on Facebook, but what I would like to share is that erstwhile, accountability was always the bane or the gain for a coachee. However, in the current scenario with so much of ambiguity and flux, both around the coachee as well as around the environment of the coachee, a little more accountability would necessarily have to be taken up by the coach. And that's where we're using the term contractor, where you encourage mutual accountability and also seek permission to be able to more micro follow through. Erstwhile, we would have a follow through from the first session to the next session, and usually nothing in between. But we believe that in the current scenario, monitoring it a little more closely. So just to kind of use the term micromanage, though I don't really mean micromanage as such, but that's the role, and that's why we just put it under the hat of a contractor. We have any other questions which we can take right now? How can we measure the role of executive coaching? Wow, that's a powerful question. That's a ROI of coaching. How is that right, Benaifer? How can we measure the ROI of coaching? Okay, awesome.
Yes,
so
for
ROI,
everything I do in my life, ROI is like the most frequently asked question.
Wow.
So.
I'm glad that, if you were an investment banker, I would probably have you as my advisor. But thank you for that question. Now, ROI in executive coaching. So right now, the whole industry is in a flux. People are wondering whether we should survive or whether we should grow. What should be our strategy? But if you look at below that, and if you replace ROI with ROE, return on expectations, I think that would be an immediate measure that would actually help you progress. In fact, we are partners to Kirkpatrick as well, and Kirkpatrick, they really propose that one should look at it from the viewpoint of return on expectations. The current expectations would be, if you are playing a survival strategy, the expectations would be different. If you are playing a growth strategy, the expectations would be different. And therefore, if you compare it with return on your expectations, I guess you'll be better off, right? So the more you get closer to your strategy, that's when I would think that executive coaching has helped. Thank you for that question, Benaifer. And let's see, we have some comments on agreeing. Okay, and we had, of course, the 8th hat, which Vasudha, thanks for bringing that up. The original hat of the coach, yes. And that's where I use the word, the 7 additional hats, right? So you can't let go the coach hat because that's the core with which you need to work. But thanks so much for that. And then another question which is coming in from Mohan Ramnathan from Facebook is, what if the coach finds the coachee incompetent? Wow, that's another powerful question. And here's one thought from my side on that, because given the current state of flux, right, there's so much of change that is going to happen all along the journey of coaching that it may be very easy to misinterpret that as incompetent. But I think before we do that, we have to give credit for the coachee to have reached the position they've already reached, and therefore they have some amount of greatness in them. And leaning on that and knowing that times are difficult, even if it appears, and that's why I'm very strongly emphasizing the word perception, or appears to be not as competent as you would like him to be or her to be. It's just about pausing a little, yourself playing some of these roles of master, partner, investigator, reflector, teacher, guide, and contractor. And that might actually change your perception as a coach. I think the fact that they have made a decision to take up coaching itself tells me that they are competent, and they might have their own struggles. The coach would require a lot of patience to help people through this journey. But thank you for that question. And we have time maybe for one last question, and I think we got that already. How often or closely do the coach and the coachee need to interact for effectiveness? How do we measure the impact of a coaching program on the coachee and the organization? So how frequently they interact, I think, is more about the situation around the coachee, the pressures on the coachee, what is expected of them, how quickly they need to change. I'm assuming that right now everybody is looking at an accelerated change situation, which means that much more frequency and interaction between the coach and the coachee. How do you measure that, or how do you know that? It's hard to give like a particular frequency. Is it going to be weekly? Is it going to be bi-weekly, daily, or maybe twice a week? Pretty much dependent on the situation. Just checking in with my organizing team. How much more time do we have? Can we take another question or two?
Yes, you can take another question, Sanjay.
Okay.
And there's one question that's actually come up a little earlier on. And
okay.
In terms of how do you make line managers coaches in this situation where the top line and the bottom line is actually being affected?
Yeah, brilliant question, and lovely, because a lot of companies are looking at adapting to a coaching culture. And I think your question is well targeted in that direction. In fact, a lot of people have gone through programs of building up coaches internally and helping the managers actually drive the coaching culture. I believe that they would need a little more upgradation of that coaching skill. So the new normal of coaching will need to help them, will need to get them aware that what they did learn as coaching is great, but there are some additional things that they will now need to do. A lot of patience, a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of depth in the kind of questions they will ask as a coach, using the ORID framework, using appreciative inquiry. I think all these are going to come in front. And empathy, as many of you also had called it out, that is going to be the foremost quality that will differentiate a good line manager when they can display that required empathy. So I guess that's what I needed to say. And we are exactly at 4 o'clock. So I'm sorry that I can see there are a few other questions, but what I would encourage you to do is, since we don't have time on this webinar right now, here are some credentials for you to connect with us, write to us. I would also encourage you to write and provide us your feedback, your thoughts, whatever you have thought, what you liked, what you disliked as well, any challenges that you foresee, because I do realize that we are trying to shift the normal, which means it is going to make a few people rethink or maybe even have controversial thinking against what we said. But we welcome all your ideas, all your thoughts, and thank you so much. Once again, my name is Sanjay Dugar. I'm from C2C Organizational Development, and special thanks to the team that worked at the back end, Jyoti Das, Shalil Nalakat, Remuna Rai, and Jijit Johnson. From C2COD, thank you everyone for attending our session, and wish you all the very best as you go and adopt or deliver coaching as you progress. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.